First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello, everyone. This is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate it. We are live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom. As we do every weekday, you can find us on our apps in whatever app store you may be on, whether that's for your phone or your television. Just look for Fox 12 Oregon. Great way to live stream this and watch it afterwards, or of course at kptv.com. Today, though, we are talking about the Oregon Zoo's Condor Conservation Program. This is something that's been going on for years and years and highly successful, and we wanted to learn more about it because they just had 2 eggs that were laid earlier this year. So we're going to find out more about that right now because I am not the expert. We've got Liz Musich, the condor keeper out there. And Liz, thank you very much for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you and learn more about everything that you do out there. And to give everybody a basic understanding, can you tell us about the Jonsson Center out there that you work at and maybe the condor program as well?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on. We're kind of a secret operation of the zoo, so it's fun to get to talk about what we do and help educate people. We're located at the Jonsson Center for Wildlife Conservation. We're a part of the zoo, but we're just an off-site property where we breed California condors for release in the wild. We've been out here for 20 plus years now, and we're just on a remote property out in Clackamas County with our breeding operation. We have currently 51 birds on our property. We have 14 breeding pairs. Yep, we just got our first 3 eggs of the season, actually. So we're off to a good start, and we're just hoping for another successful year.
Are all of the birds out there condors?
Yes. Yep. We have 51 condors, and we have 2 goats that live on the property.
Well, and I want to get into talking about the eggs as well, and this part of it. But for the condor program, why is it, they're California condors, I guess. Could you give everybody maybe a little bit of an explainer about the California condors themselves and what it is about the center out there here in Oregon that makes it such a great place for this program?
Yeah, so California condors are a critically endangered species. There's only like the last numbers we got is about 560 condors total remaining in the world, and they're all located either within California or Arizona, or like in the wild, and then there's some breeding facilities outside of those areas, obviously. But they used to be located all across the West Coast, so from Baja to British Columbia. This is a great, historically condor range. So it's a great place for them to be raised and develop, and then later be released, typically either in California, multiple places throughout California, or in Arizona at the Grand Canyon. And I should say there also is a release site in Baja as well.
Oh, nice. So California, Arizona, and in Baja too for releasing them. And for the Oregon side of things, how did the California condor program? I mean, this would seemingly be then a bird that may be more adapted to the Southwest, to that kind of climate. What is it about the program here specifically that makes it work so well?
Well, I mean, we were just, the Oregon Zoo expressed interest in partnering with the program as to be one of the breeding facilities. We have this amazing space out here. It's really remote. The birds they don't have contact with people or human sounds and activity for the most part. And so it's a very secluded, very great property for raising these birds to be as wild as possible, to help them be as successful as possible when they are released in the wild. So we thankfully when we got on board with this program, we had this wonderful property out here to really help contribute to eggs and chick production and releasing birds to increase the numbers in the wild.
Wow. I mean, that makes sense, to have something like that and to not have contact with humans as much as possible. So having someplace remote like that. And, to that extent, can you tell us about the program? So how does this work? You have these 2 eggs, 2 of 3, I guess, of the season. What do you do now that you have these eggs? How do you raise them and make sure that you're disattached enough to where they're not used to humans and go through that whole process?
Yeah. So we have, yes, we have the 3 eggs now. We hope to get quite a few more. It'd be great if we got, at least 10 more eggs. We have 14 breeding pairs, and typically condors lay 1 egg a year. But in captivity, we can manipulate things. We can pull their egg to get the females and the pairs to recycle, to lay again, so that in case we get infertile eggs or eggs that don't make it through development, we can have some backups, or maybe every year a pair doesn't lay an egg, but they could foster. There is, we're very hands-on, but also very hands-off. So there's many things we can do to like increase production, but we also try to leave it up to the birds as much as possible. So we put pairs together. Sometimes they bond really well, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you put a pair together and they will lay an egg that year. Sometimes you put a pair together and it takes them multiple years to bond and actually want to go through courtship and copulation and egg lay and chick rearing. So it's we do the best we can to put pairs together who are have strong genetics. So there's reduce the chances of inbreeding, but it's ultimately up to the birds to do the work. So then once an egg is laid, we want the birds to be able to sit on them, so naturally incubate for about 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, we will pull the egg to our artificial incubators, and we will either replace that live egg with a fake egg, we call it a dummy egg, that looks, it's the same size, same color, same weight as the live egg, and either they will sit on the dummy or we will pull it, so that will encourage the pair to recycle and lay again if we need a second egg from that pair. So after 2 weeks, the eggs come into our incubators and we then track their development for the remainder of their incubation. So they're typically from egg lay to hatch is about 57 days. There can be, give or take a couple of days. But once we have them in our incubators, we are checking on them every single day. We weigh them daily. We candle them, which means hold them up to a bright light so that we can track their development. We candle them once a week because there are things we can do to help. Well, first we can tell if they're developing normally, and if they're not, there are some things that we can do to help like get that chick to still hatch and be a healthy, viable chick. Or just to know what we might be, need to be prepared for. So then after the eggs internally pip, which means the chicks on the chick has developed to its full size, and then it breaks through an interior membrane of their shell before it cracks through the outer portion of the shell. So we will put their egg back in with the pair at internal pip so that it will actually hatch under the pair, and they will go from having their dummy egg to their live egg, and they'll be very excited that now their egg is hatching. That it's a very active process, like the chick is moving around in there, that it's very active, it's tapping on the shell. The parents react to that. The parents encourage the chick to keep going, and then as soon as it's hatched, then they bond for the most part. So and once we put that egg back in the nest room, we hope we don't have to touch it again and the parents can do everything they need to do. We will intervene if there is either neglect or abuse or something happening. But for the most part, we want the parents to raise the chicks, because they can do it so much better than we can. We're not really good at being condors, and they're awesome at being condors.
Well, how long typically is a condor, say, from an egg to when you put it back out into the wild?
So yeah, they're about a year and a half old once they get released in the wild. So when they hatch, they are with their parents, depending on when they hatch, typically like 7 to 9 months, they are actually in with their parents. And then once they, we pull them every November, December from their parents so that the pairs will be able to breed again for the next season. Because if their chick was with them, the pairs might not go back into like courtship and breeding mode. So we remove their chicks from them at about 7 to 9 months, so that the pairs can go back into breeding mode. And then those chicks are put in our pre-release pen, which is a really large pen of all the chicks and at least one adult mentor. So and that adult mentor will teach them the social hierarchy of being a condor, that they are the chicks, they eat last, they get the lowest perch, in the snag, because when they go out to the wild, the wild birds will be kind of ruthless on the new recruits, and they need to know their place before they go out to the wild and like really face reality.
I mean, that's incredible. Just that you have this system down so well, and you've been doing it for decades. That this program's been going and so successful. So, once they're out into the wild, what are some of the biggest threats facing California condors still to this day?
Yeah, so when they're initially released, kind of the biggest threats are really just kind of like bad behaviors from the birds, either like not perching appropriately, not being high up enough up in a tree, and maybe being predated on by coyotes or bobcats. That is pretty rare. And then, but their success rate is pretty good at the beginning. But then once they've been out longer, the biggest threats to them are lead toxicity from spent ammunition that is left over in carcass piles or gut piles that they will come across and eat on. And then most recently, HPAI, or the highly pathogenic avian influenza, wiped out quite a few birds in Arizona a couple years ago.
And I mean, that's horrible for that part. For when it comes to California condors, what do you think is the most important thing for the general public to understand about the animal themselves, but also the work that you're doing to conserve them?
Yeah, I think it's just to have an appreciation for the bird. Some people look at them and say like, ew, what an ugly bird. They have a bald head and they're, ew, what, they're not flashy and bright. But just to like grow an appreciation, they are the cleanup crew. They eat the dead and grossest stuff in the environment that nobody else wants to touch, and they happily come in and they clean it up for us. They take disease off the landscape. They take just like death and decay off the landscape. They do so, like, they're the unsung heroes of the ecosystem. They're like turkey vultures. People don't usually appreciate those birds on the side of the road eating the deer carcass that got hit. But they do so much work for us. So just like to grow an appreciation for them, and maybe they're not the brightest and flashiest birds, but they are truly magnificent. And I mean, their wingspan is almost 10 feet long. They're massive. They're huge. And if you ever saw a condor in the wild, I mean, even at the zoo, you would just be like, oh my gosh, that is such a huge bird. And we think bald eagles are big or red-tailed hawks are big, and they're like babies in comparison to condors. So just really to grow an appreciation and understanding, and that lead is the biggest threat to them, and how can we help them with that? And just the Oregon Zoo is a great lead outreach and education, and just to be aware of like how you could potentially impact them.
All good things to know. And for people who want to know more about the program and everything that you're doing, is there a good place for them to go or study or follow along, I guess, maybe with some of the work that you're doing, and maybe educate themselves a little bit more about some of those things that you brought up?
Yeah, the Oregon Zoo's website is really great. It gives, they frequently at this time of the year, because we have lots of eggs being laid, and then in a couple months we'll have chicks being hatched. They're always giving updates of like what we're actually doing out here. And then it'll have, just how you can help in general. And then, if you were to look, there's condor live cams for like wild nests and some of the other institutions that work are helping to recover the California condors, and to just like watch those and see how unique these birds are and how maybe they all look alike, but they are all completely their own individual and they all have their own personalities. And you'll quickly learn that if you were to, watch them for any amount of time, or visit the zoo. And we have birds on exhibit, and there's like lots of information there. You keeper talks regularly at the zoo to engage people and help spread the word and how we can help the condors.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for talking about it and the work that you do there and learning more about the program for everybody. And is there any plan to ever release them in Oregon?
That is a dream for sure, but it is not, it takes so much planning to create a release site. There is now a release site in Northern California up in the Redwoods. So the hope is that they will be, they will at least fly into Oregon, into Southern Oregon, maybe along the coastline. And then of course, one day we would love to have like release birds in Oregon. It's a lot of work.
One step at a time then.
One step at a time, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Liz, for joining us and for talking about this. And yeah, I really, really appreciate you being here on Fox 12 Now.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And for everybody watching, we are live. We're going to take a break here. We'll be back throughout the afternoon. We got a lot of different things that we're going to be covering. And as I mentioned earlier, you can download those Fox 12 Oregon apps or go to kptv.com under the Fox 12 Now tab and take a look at some of these different discussions and segments we get to cover. We cover everything on this show, including learning about condors, which is really, really fun. So thanks to everybody for being a part of it. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.